Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Scot Harvath podcast. How you doing this week, Mike?
I'm good, Chris, but I was glad you had some good news for me about what comes next on the Brad Thor pod, because I don't even want to be here tonight talking about this one, to be honest with you, after last week.
So I had to be like, I couldn't just, I was gearing up for today's pod, and I reread the Epilogue II, subject of tonight's podcast. And I was like, going home, I can't leave that as like a bad taste in my mouth. Let me just start Hidden Order. Let me see if there's any sort of redemption. And I will say, I am digging it very much so. Much
Act
more
of War,
than
the next one.
Act of War. Yes, Act of War. So we're dealing with China. We're getting back to geopolitical, Scot on a mission, Scot being an operator. None of this, whatever Brad was going with, the murder mystery stuff. I mean, it, like we said in the last pod, he likes to go off and do these one-offs where, in this case, it's, previously it was about the Freemasons or, Thomas Jefferson, all that. We've gone through Hannibal.
Yep.
Now we did
the plagues.
Now we did the Civil War. Not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War with the Fed. Mixed in with the Fed. So, it is what it is. At least the first 5 chapters. I think there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
Okay. So Act of War is bringing it back, and I think kicking off another phase of Brad, which you and I are both very excited to get to. I think it's still 3-4 books away, but Spy Master is coming, and I really think now that we have Lara, that is taking us to a new phase, kind of this phase of Scot talking about being a father constantly. That was put on the back burner recently as he's, going through women left and right every book. I think it's good. One good thing, redeeming quality about Hidden Order, Lara, getting Lara, getting her son, seeing Scot. Exactly. And it's kind of a shame we dished so hard on the book where she's brought in last week, but I think it's a sign of good things to come. So
yeah, I would say so.
Now, Epilogue 2.
Yeah.
You and I were talking like, what's the deal with the prelude that was published separately? Didn't really connect to much of the book. Then we saw this book also had a second epilogue, kind of an alternate ending.
And
you and I left thinking maybe this thing will save Hidden Order. Maybe it's some missing piece that completes the puzzle, helps it fall into place. And I was really ready to be like, okay, maybe we could salvage something here. Nope. We just dumped the whole load of that dump truck right out. It's a hot pile in mess right now. I'm incredibly disappointed that if we're getting 2 extra publications to Hidden Order, these bookends, start and finish, they must do something like really super cool, or at least really important to tell this story. They do absolutely nothing for me. They ruin it in many ways. They make it even worse than it was. Am I being harsh?
No, I think one of the big things that I don't love is I feel like it's one thing to go from, all right, one book to the next, and then give us a sort of 1 paragraph thing about Scot spent the summer. One of the first things he says when we meet Scot in the next book is how he recently met this lady and she has a fabulous son. He said he was tan. Anyways, he starts off, he's in Pakistan and he's undercover. And so it makes sense that he needed to be tan to be undercover.
Sure.
And he's like, the reason he's been tan is because he's been spending a lot of time outside with this great lady that he met and this son. And saying that in between books, that is better than me giving this epilogue. And now all of a sudden he's just going to be on the beach and kissing this girl that he just you're jumping way too quick. I mean, I know they had some chemistry, but whoa.
They had some great chemistry. And then to jump to this beach scene where he literally is acting like the father to this boy.
The father?
I want that, but I want to buy into it. I want it to develop.
Didn't buy into it that quickly.
I wanted it to be earned. His relationship with Lara was earned in Hidden Order. I felt that they were a good team together. chasing down leads, figuring out this puzzle. But I think he needed to earn his way into Marco's life for Lara to let down her guard and let him into that sacred part of her life. Happened a little too easily. That's good to hear, though, because maybe this epilogue is less about wrapping up this book and more about starting the next one.
Yeah, maybe.
So filling in the gap of him being tanned on the beach so he can go to Pakistan. I'm actually kind of okay with.
Yeah.
But then it's a prelude to the next book. It's not an epilogue to this one. The Epilogue 2 is throwing me off.
But the epilogue part is just complete and utter, like, farce, like a farcity. Like,
agreed.
Okay, he gets randomly called off. Like, he has to now go to what? He has to go to Dubai, or he has to go to. I guess he has to go to both Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Dubai, one to get the Falcons, and the other one to essentially feed the Falcons to this Tariqi guy.
Dude, that was kind of nasty. So the one thing here where I'm like, maybe Brad had this idea and knew it would totally flop or shouldn't be in one of the books, but couldn't help himself and just wanted to write the feeding the Falcon scene, which wasn't true in the end. Scott protected the Falcons. They're coming to America. They're going to be housed properly and cared for. But making this guy shit his pants, was just so much fun thinking he fed him the Falcon dish. I thought that again was another bright side of this. Could have been a really cool move.
I think that was the best part.
Yeah.
But it's so hysterical, and like it screams of like, I have this, like you said, I have this idea and I want to figure out how to fit it into the book. Ultimately, like maybe my editor said I shouldn't put that into the book. And so, but I'm going to put it here now in my alternative ending, which is like,
let's publish it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It really, really feels that way. It absolutely does. And to be honest, it doesn't really work as a well-written scene, because when Scott just pops up in this dude's hotel room, I was like, wait. How did we get here? It was
it's very quick. You could tell it's like, it's not fully fleshed out. It's just like an idea.
It's kind of like in the most recent Rap book in Code Red, something happens at the end where Rap snuck up on a guy inside of his own mansion and left a hint. And we, the readers, are kind of like, how did he do that?
Right.
How did he leave those there? It's kind of like Scott just shows up on this guy.
I thought the best part of the epilogue was when he leaves the guy. Like, first I thought he was going to kill him.
The chopper.
Leaves the guy. Then the guy gets a phone call from none other than the president. But then the chopper scene, like the president phone calls, whatever. But then like the fact that Scott is now in the chopper and like looking into this thing, like that's just a cool image in my head. Like, and then Scott goes away. I don't know. For some reason, I like that the most.
Both of those, the president on the cell phone and the chopper, I thought he would release the Falcons right there with a big
that would have been cool. Yeah.
I thought something like that would happen, but both of those again, they were forced. It was cool concepts, half-baked execution.
Reminds me of like an Arnold Schwarzenegger scene that I've seen before. You know what I mean?
Somebody just pulling up on the helicopter and flipping you the bird and then pulling out sounds so familiar, but I couldn't place what it was.
Yeah, same.
It definitely could be Arnold, the governor. But both of those things here didn't work for me. When the president called on the cell phone, I was like, roll my eyes. I don't even know. Here,
and
I guess
we haven't even met this president.
Dude, the bigger picture here is we haven't met the president really, and even Tariqi. I honestly don't care. Was this guy truly the bad guy in Hidden Order? Like, I get he was pulling strings and blackmailing people and maybe this mastermind shadowy figure, but he just pops up in a random epilogue. I get his name was dropped throughout the book. We knew there was a Saudi connection, but it just again feels like we had a book where there wasn't a big bad Arab, let's go ahead and do that all of a sudden. And I was like, really? We just had to end with a classical, it was just a trope. Not even to mention the other trope, Rap getting called on the beach and the SUVs driving up, and only the old man would know where I was from tracking the cell phone battery.
Scott,
yeah. Only Scott would get tracked and be called out of this. Like, how many times has Gary Lawler done the same thing? We open a book with Scott getting called to action. He was in the middle of his life. He was with a girl. Too many tropes being forced into something that honestly didn't even need to be published.
Yeah, which I think that's why it's this alternative ending. Just something a little bit extra, wet the beak. Because just when I looked it up, it was published a couple months after the book came out. Whereas the other one was published like directly before the book came out.
And I know it's different, but let me ask you something, because we've actually said
the prelude was much better than this epilogue too.
The prelude was really cool, and I think added some action to Hidden Order, story-wise and plot-wise. It unfortunately didn't connect. We hashed that out. But action-wise, You're right. It landed, and it wasn't forced like this one. It felt real. I was along for the ride. Here, it was just too many eye rolls.
We've seen a lot of books where the opening action sequence has nothing to do with, like, we've seen it with...
It's true.
We've seen it with Vince. We've seen it with Kyle. We've seen it with Jack. We've seen it with,
I don't know if I'm a fan of that.
Other people where, one of the books that we crap on the most is there's a huge dichotomy where it's almost like two books.
Right. Protect and Defend.
Protect and Defend. I was thinking of
Executive Power too. Yeah, no.
But
like we went back and read Protect and Defend, and like seeing justice for Stu Garrett was really, really cool. But I still don't think it should fit in that book. That's something I would like to see as an interlude, a novella, a little in-between book kind of short story. Same way, you know who did it well? Chris Howdy did it well. Insurrection Day in the Haley Chills series. It was nice and quick. It touched on current events, so you could see why he wanted to tell that story, why he wanted to put it out there about January 6th. Like that kind of made sense, and it landed and it hit, and everyone was in character, and it was a story unto itself. Like it had a beginning, middle, and end. It had a plot, it had a sequence, even though you do it shorter. Ward Larson had one of those, which was, I think it was Assassins. I forget what his
I know what you're talking about.
He had an origin story for David Slayton, the assassin, where we saw his training with Anton Bloch. Again, there was a purpose for having that little novella to add something to the universe, add something about the character's background or what they're doing at a particular time. Like Chris Howdy, right? Haley Chills just going for a run in Washington, stumbles upon this plot. It was somewhat viable that she was living her life just doing those things.
Right. All right.
I feel like we want more of these interludes. We want to see the characters in between books and what's going on with them, even if it's very short, quippy kind of anecdotes. I don't know why, though. I don't want it to be something like this.
It's. I think it's because we've seen like the best that this can be,
right,
in terms of like transfer of power. Is essentially where the big bad gets away and Mitch has to go down to a location and take care of business. We've seen the pinnacle of this kind of epilogue. Yeah, then this just isn't it. But, it is what it is. We got a little bit something extra. We got a little bit extra content out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It gives us an extra week to read Act of War, which I'm vibing with so far. So,
yeah, I like that. Quick little one for the people, and we'll get back to Act of War. After that, where are we going? Are we going back to the Mitch Rapp podcast? Will we be gearing up for Capture or Kill? Or will we have anything to do? Oh, well, we have our Patron book club book. I think in May or June,
yes,
we'll be doing The Kill Artist by Daniel Silva on the Thriller podcast. Yeah. I'm excited for that one.
Was there any of these, you mentioned these book club questions from Hidden Order. Was there any of those you wanted to touch on, or we kind of hit everything? We kind of hit everything. But if anyone's interested, I think Mike kind of mentioned this last week, but unlike some of the other books that Brad has done, these like 5 thoughts or five facts?
Yeah, the 5 fast facts. Yep.
From the more recent novels, he has a huge blog dating back to the very beginning. And in one case, he has some book club questions for Hidden Order. If you want to read along, think about it, what it means.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? As I glance through them, it kind of helps me understand, and I think I said this on the Hidden Order pod, like what Brad wanted to do with that book, bringing in the Somalia stuff in the beginning and then having a book about the Fed, I think to show these two different worlds, if you will, the first and the third world, but the developed, the undeveloped. Mm-hmm. who the bad guys are. Who's worse, somebody capturing a ship and holding people hostage and ransoming them for money so their community can eat, or someone who's embezzling all this money, doing all this bad stuff in Wall Street and, screwing over people that way? Which one's the greater evil? Same thing with like Cordero. What's her name? Lara Cordero. He says she drops her armor on the way home. There's those two scenes where they're driving, her and Scott, and anytime she's going towards her house, she's slowly letting her her self-defense, persona drop, and she's becoming vulnerable. And Scott picks up on that, and he's like, I'm gonna not push. I'm gonna step back. I'm not gonna be my jokester self, because he realizes her transitioning to mom. So I feel like there are some moves Brad was really intentional about in this book. That makes sense. It's just unfortunate the plot didn't work out for us. So I see what he was trying to do.
Yeah, there's this one question that he poses is like, the president, at the end, the president says that there is no industry that's not too big to fail and no one person that's too big to jail. And then Brad asks, do you agree or disagree? Pick a side, make your case. So,
sure.
I think reading these, you can definitely sort of get yourself in the mindset of what Brad was when he was writing this and like what he was trying to go for, and might help you better, click or, think about this novel as you're going on. So,
yeah, it's interesting too. I feel like books we haven't liked, when an author has an agenda, I'm going to tackle this topic. And so I'm going to force my characters to grapple with that. Like we said in Hidden Order, the old man had to talk about being in financial straits. He's really trying to keep the company afloat, and the bottom line isn't working out for him, and he's getting desperate. I feel like we had to force the characters into that because we wanted to raise these economic questions versus what's really believable in universe that the characters will actually be going through. And right. I feel like that wasn't balanced here because it had a little too much of that didactic approach of, I'm going to teach you this lesson, as opposed to, I'm going to let a story unfold in universe that's authentic.
Right. That's you, and I'm going to try to, fit this lesson inside of it,
Yeah.
As opposed to force feeding it.
Exactly. And when that balance is off, you and I tend to not really like those books as much.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
A cautionary tale for thriller authors everywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, next time we'll be covering Act of War. Before that, we got to thank our patrons, our special operators, Sherry F. and Jason, our special agents, Ben, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Peggy, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review to all 3 seasons of No Limits using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Insta at thrillerpodcast. And as always, just let Lara be Lara.